minutes.
Okay,
so that we can take a lot of questions. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I need to share my screen right away.
Okay.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes. Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm so delighted to be here, and I want to thank Mrs. Joke Babatunde for this rare opportunity. I do not take it for granted. And I also want to thank Mr. Babatunde for this opportunity as well. And a big thank you to His Excellency Otunba Femi Pedro for laying the great foundation on our financial journey. Thank you so much, Jesmine, for helping us to know better about our mindset. I'm so delighted to be here, and I welcome everyone to this webinar. And I'm just going straight into the discussion. So I'm going to be discussing about managing our personal finances as learned lawyers. So I'll cover briefly about the economic situation, the mindset issues. Otunba laid the foundation about this, the fundamental pillars of personal finance, way forward, and some of the life issues that we're facing. The economic situation is depressing, but we need to get over it. We know what has happened with the COVID. Exchange rate has gone up. There's a drop in investment rate. The Brent crude oil price has dropped. Inflation has increased. Unemployment has increased. All the indices are down. And this has impacted on households. It has impacted on businesses. It has impacted the government as well. Our trade position is not spared as well. And recently, there's a newcomer pronouncement that lawyers have been talking about, where they are being impacted in terms of helping to register some companies. And this, I must confess, is going to be a threat to their income generation. But in spite of all this, we still need to continue. Life has to move on. And that is where we need to deal with the issue of our mindset. And that is the big elephant in the room. The foundation has been laid by Otunba. Without getting the right mindset, everything else is going to be a problem. And there's a popular saying that 80% is about mindset and 20% is about execution. So we need to deal with our mindset first and be ready to face the future. So how are we feeling this period? Are we feeling guilty? I saw a comment, someone mentioned that, oh, how I wished I heard this when I left law school. It is not too late. It is not too late. So this is the time to take the bold step. So we need to deal with that issue of mindset. Forget the past. There's nothing you can do about the past. We need to deal with the future now. And managing our personal finance is a journey, like Otunba rightly mentioned. It's not a destination, and it is not too late to turn a new leaf. One other mindset that we need to deal with is that big man mentality. He spoke so much about that. So how often do we feel pressure to buy things that we don't even need to please people? We want to appear wealthy. We want to appear successful. We need to deal with this issue. And sometimes, you know, we over-treat ourselves. We over-pamper ourselves. We buy most things based on impulse without thinking about it. And sometimes, you know, our inability to say no is also a problem. We need to save ourselves first. Yourself, you are the first person. You need to deal with yourself first. So you need to get away or to throw out that guilty mentality. When people ask you, you start feeling guilty. You need to save yourself first. So this is where I'm going to start from, the mindset. We need to deal with it. And I'm going straight into the personal finance. So we're looking at the framework. So what is personal finance? It's just the process of planning and managing your financial activities, your personal financial activities. The way you're managing your firm, the way you're managing, working for someone, managing the business. You also need to manage yourself because you are the boss of yourself. So you need to plan and you need to manage. And it's a process. It's continuous. It's something that you keep doing over and over again. So we need to get this fact, we need to get this right. We have to plan and we have to manage. And what are we managing? All our financial resources. And we're going to look at the 5 pillars or the framework of your personal finance. So there are 5 aspects that we are dealing with. We're dealing with the first one, income. You have your spending, savings, investment, and security. These are the 5 pillars of your personal finance. And the one in the middle, that's the income, because that's the foundation. Without income, every other thing can't happen. So that's like the central pillar of your personal finance. So we are going to look at each one of these pillars, one after the other, and share experience and look at ways of managing these 5 pillars to move us to the financial security, to get to be financially independent, and to have that financial freedom that Otunba mentioned earlier. So the first one is your income. So how many, the income is the source of cash inflow that you have to support yourself and your family. It is the starting point. Every other decision evolves around your income. And your income is your greatest wealth building tool. That is the starting point. And it requires your active participation. It could either be in the form of full-time job, or whether you're running a business, you are actively involved. And like Otunba mentioned, you need to understand the instruments of wealth. So the first instrument of your wealth is your income. So how many sources do you have? How many streams of income do you have? And for this purpose, you have the active and you have the passive. Otunba mentioned about the passive, the investment, and the interest income, the rental income, the capital gains from your stock, the dividend income. And we also have agri-tech businesses now that are crowdfunding, that is pulling resources together. You have royalty, you have commodity. But if you look at the active part, they are limited because it is based on your effort. It requires your active participation. And the major one here is your earned income, which is in form of your salaries or your bonus. And it comes also in form of profit if you are running a business. And one area that is trending now is monetizing your knowledge, where you, because of your experience, because of the knowledge you have acquired over the years, you're able to impact this knowledge for value. Jesmine mentioned about exchange of value. And this is one key area where lawyers can monetize their knowledge. Then the passive, just note this, that your passive is a result of your active income, because it is from the active income that you start setting aside money to invest. And when you invest, it starts increasing. Your money starts working for you. So you need to manage the active so that the passive can increase. This is extremely important. So what do you need to do? You need to diversify your income stream, both active, starting from the active and increasing the passive as well. Now, this issue of side hustles, I know that as lawyers, there are rules of conduct, that impacts on you. But how about empowering your spouse? This is one key area that you can leverage on, especially for the married lawyers. You can empower your spouse, and you can also monetize your knowledge. You teach your skills online. I know lawyers that are really, they're making so much money from this area. You don't have to advertise, but you start by teaching. You teach your skills online. I'm not sure there's any code of conduct against teaching your skills, what you know, impacting knowledge. And by doing that, people will start coming to you. There was someone I met online. She was teaching about copyright, and I contacted her to help me register the trademark for my business. She didn't advertise. I just saw her teaching on the importance of trademarks and copyright and things like that. Knowledge is the new gold. So you can always find an innovative way about it. This is one area that we can look at. And lawyers, you have skills, especially writing skills. I'm not sure there's any profession that is as good as lawyers when it comes to writing. So this is one area that you can also monetize your knowledge. You can start a blog. You don't have to advertise. And for some of the social media platforms, once you get to a certain level, you start earning from YouTube, from Instagram. So these are some of the ways that you can diversify your income stream. And don't forget, empower your spouse. This is one area that you can leverage on to increase your income. So let's move on to the second part. That is spending. We've spoken about your income, which is the pillar that drives everything. The second one is your spending. And this is mainly on consumables. You buy goods, you buy services, and it's consumed. And this is the most difficult aspect to crack. Remember, Otunba mentioned about discipline. You have to be financially disciplined for you to achieve financial independence. And note that expenses reduce available cash for your savings and investments. If you don't manage your income very well, then it becomes difficult to save. It becomes difficult to invest. So this is one area that requires a lot of discipline, and it is also in our control. And in this case, we need to differentiate between wants and needs. And in fact, COVID-19 has shown everyone what is critical for survival. For the past few months, nobody went out. We were all locked down at home. We were eating every day. We had shelter, and we were wearing clothes. Even the clothes we were wearing were just housewares. So all the shoes, all the designer bags, everything became useless for those months. And even till now, some of those things, you are not using them. So which shows that they are not critical. They are not critical for our survival. So this should start, we need to start looking at, thinking about it, changing our perspective so that we focus on what is critical in building our wealth. And the first part is managing our spending. And a lack of control can spell doom. Remember, your salary will not make you rich. Your spending habits will do that. No matter how much you are earning, just think about the artisans, think about the market woman in the market selling groceries, selling food stuff, and they are still surviving. Look at drivers, they are still surviving. So sometimes I just begin to wonder how they are doing it. But you know, when you have your income will determine how much you are going to spend. And like Otunba mentioned, if you cannot save when you have 20,000 naira, you won't be able to save or invest when you have 100,000 naira or 1 million naira. And one major area here for us to achieve financial independence, we need to monitor our spending. We need to live within our means. And it is not how much we earn, but how much we spend. So when our expenses, when it goes out of range, right, it becomes a problem. You start borrowing money from one person to another. Let me just give an example. This happened when I was in Airtel. We were all expecting promotion in one year. So one of my colleagues, you know, because he was so sure that he was going to be promoted, he changed his accommodation. He rented an apartment of about 3 million naira because his next income was going to accommodate the cost. Unfortunately, he was not promoted. He had to leave that accommodation when the rent expired. And like Otunba said, no matter how much you are earning, if you are earning so much, your expense will rise at the same level if you are not careful. So we need to peg it. We need to peg it. And one other area is lack of financial intelligence. We need to gain knowledge. We need to deal with the issues we're having. If we don't deal with our money problems, if we don't deal with our spending habits, then it becomes a problem. And there's one saying from Steve Harris' book, that money that is unplanned for, it comes with a gift of amnesia. That is forgetfulness. Because sometimes you can't explain how you have spent your money because you didn't plan for it. Once you plan for it, then there's a control. But if it is not planned, you won't even know how it will get, it will filter away. So we need to look at this carefully. So how would you, I just want to ask you a question, how would you rate your spending habits? What percentage do you spend on needs? What percentage do you spend on wants? How much do you save? And from the illustration here, why the rich are getting richer is because look at this graph. Let's just look at this graph for a second. This is the amount earned. Look at, we need to avoid wastages. Let me share an experience. In around 2012, I went for a program in India. I was working with the global CFO of Airtel. These are executive officers, C-level officers. There was one head, the director of SCM and the global CFO. They live in the same estate. And you won't believe it that, you know, sometimes they do ride sharing. They come to the office with themselves. Just think about it. You know, imagine a C-level officer in Nigeria. Will that happen? So that mentality, that big man mentality, we want to appear big and wealthy, is creating problem for us. You can imagine the amount of fuel that will be saved doing that. Otunba told us that he had to sacrifice, he had to do a lot of things just to build up that wealth. So the same way, we need to look at, review the way we have been spending, and it is not too late. Remember, the price we have to pay for financial freedom is discipline. So we need to look at it. And little expenses can sink the ship of your income. Your ability to save, your passive income depends on how you manage your active income. So let's look at the third pillar, which is savings. Savings is that excess that you retain for future investment or for spending. It is the surplus. If you don't manage your income very well, if you don't manage your expenses very well, then your savings will be impacted. Once your savings is impacted, your investment will be impacted. And it is highly impacted by your spending habits. So you need to keep track of your expenses and look at the things that you can shelve, the things that you can eliminate. So when you have a budget, every month, this is how much I'm going to spend for food. This is how much I'm going to spend on, what you spend on transportation. Then how much then you need to have some amount for savings so that savings can now be invested. So plan your savings. Just think about how much you want to save in a particular year. Divide it by 12 and start saving it on a monthly basis. And you can start small. You don't have to start big. You don't have to start with so much money. Whatever you have, you need to start with that. You can have an automatic debit so that you don't even, it doesn't come into your account. And you can make sure that your savings account does not have an ATM card or an internet banking facility. Otherwise, you will be tempted. Your savings account is not the account for ATM or internet banking. Because when you don't have this access, then it will be difficult for you to start withdrawing from it. And like Otunba mentioned, there are so many investment companies that you can leverage with, have relationship with, so that you put in standing debit instruction on a monthly basis. If you know that you can't manage a savings account.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but I'm going to need you to wrap up. You've overshot your time, so.
Okay, so for investments, Otunba has mentioned a lot about investments. These are the types of investments. You have the stock, the fixed deposit, bonds, mutual fund, index fund, real estate, agri-tech companies are coming up now that you can invest in. Then the last part is your protection, which has to do with life insurance, your health insurance, and your estate planning. This is one area that we don't really bother about, but it is also extremely important that we bother about it because life happens. So we need to set aside some funds to take care of this aspect. Then to avoid, this is an illustration that we can use. For instance, you have 30.5 million to be spent. If you buy a car, this is what happens. If you invest that in with getting 10% interest, your 31 million will become 57 million in 8 years. Meanwhile, if you buy a car, by the 8th year, it reduces to 7 million. So just think about it. This is just an illustration. We need to avoid some traps. Cars, it doesn't add value, it's a liability. You keep spending on it. Your accommodation, live within your means. School fees as well, lifestyle, we want to show, oh, okay, our children are going to top class school. We need to look at this. Our money has to work for us. Then what are the key principles that we need to look at? We need to save, we need to invest, we need to put some money as tight on a monthly basis. But you need to look at what works for you. You have to do what works for you. So these are the 5 things that will make us wealthy. We need to set objectives. We need to write our budget. We need to get out of debt. Always live on less that you make. Save and invest. And at the end of the day, our journey to financial freedom will be achieved.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you very much.
So much.
I know if I leave you, you could go on and on. It's obvious that this is something you're very passionate about. It's been a crash course on managing our personal